Do we know what to do when the world is on fire and everything feels urgent? Suffering, challenge, difficulty, this is part of being human. We have to be allowed to be messy.
This actually helps us be more of who we are. In this episode, you'll learn why we keep waiting to feel happy and how to meet a hard world with more steadiness and softness. My guest is Dr. Elli Weisbaum from the University of Toronto. She teaches the science and practice of mindfulness for mental health.
Do you think the world could use a little more softness right now?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pause to Elevate with Dr. Al-Mashat, where I share conversations about mindset, mindfulness, and psychology so you can better understand your mind to transform and elevate your life. I am so thrilled to share today's conversation with Dr. Ellie Weisbaum. Welcome again, and thank you so much for joining us and your truly incredible depth and breadth of work and just there's so many things that you're doing right now. So thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. And, as we shared already, it's so much fun to have these conversations. Sometimes we don't know where to go to find community, to connect. And so already just in our emails leading up to this, I was already thinking this is going to be fun.
Thank you so much. It truly was when we just first connected to talk about this. And I left feeling like so energized. And I thought, oh, wow, we're going to need like a 7-hour podcast to like cover all of this. So I wonder if we can begin with this intersection of science, neuroscience, and this Buddhist psychology. Like, what got you interested in these massive areas in life and bringing them together, both practically and on a research level? How did you get pulled into this or drawn into?
Right? It's a great question. And, I think at the heart of all the work I do, and sometimes on paper it can seem like, and we'll talk a bit about this, that I do a wild amount of things in a lot of different buckets. We've got research, teaching, pedagogy. I've been in, we heard public health, Department of Medicine. We've got, undergraduates in arts and sciences. I'm doing global work with Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village. We're going to get into all these
Oh,
soon.
yeah.
But I think your question makes me think, what pulled me in and keeps me pulled in, the red thread through everything I do, is this real interest in what does it actually mean to build communities where we can flourish and thrive. It's kind of at the heart of every single space I'm in. And, to answer your question, if you want to know how I got pulled into this, we have to go all the way back to my childhood. So we actually do need several lifetimes. And what I wanted to share was, I went to my first retreat with internationally renowned scholar, peace activist, Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, we call Thich for short, nominated for Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King. Just an incredible body of work. If listeners aren't familiar, we'll probably talk more about this body of work. But the kind of quick summary is my father, a physician, my mother, an artist who worked in schools, worked with marginalized communities, and both of them were curious about, in both the fields of healthcare and education. My parents both had these curious minds. What are the puzzle pieces we're missing to make this a safe space for the caregivers, to create ecosystems of care and education and healthcare? Like, my parents were both so passionate about that. And so that was brought into my life growing up. And I can tell you, you come home from a retreat when you're a teenager, others are like, what were you doing? And so very quickly I was like, I don't need to, I discovered you don't need to tell someone you are listening to them with compassion to do that. And so, when you say, how did I get roped in? It was part of how I lived and breathed growing up. And when I stepped into the world through university, starting my undergraduate was in, fine arts and film production. We'll talk about how I got to medical science.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm a truly interdisciplinary human. And all of it is like, I'm curious about stories, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell others. My parents raised me to question the systems of healthcare and education and also to love them. And so I've just been roped in my whole life into this question of like braiding together different knowledge streams in the service of making these key sectors of our society more healthy.
Oh, what a beautiful way of combining things as you're describing this questioning things but loving them at the same time. So it doesn't become a rejection of something, but actually questioning with curiosity and loving what is, like in terms of knowledge. That's quite an
Right?
interesting.
And isn't that the same? Like, here's
Yeah.
what I'm going to pose to you, right? If we think about like, what does it mean to be an excellent scientist and researcher, right?
Mm,
We are always, I hope, engaged in curiosity and questioning. That is how the
mm,
earth remains flat if we are not curious and ask questions, right? And so to me, moving knowledge forward in the deep spirit of scientific inquiry is to allow the knowledge of yesterday to expand, to grow, to change, to question.
mm,
And we have a rigorous way of doing that. So there's both like respect for tradition and this ability to change. And to me, this is incredibly
um,
congruent with what's at the heart of Buddhist psychology. The first of the
mm,
14 mindfulness trainings that you take in Plum Village is openness, non-dogmatism, to love yourself and embrace suffering and say I can transform this into wellness. So to me, the rigor of being a scientist and the ontology and epistemology of like Buddhist psychology are kind of like this, like saying the same things with different language.
mm. Can you say some more about that? That's beautiful. These trainings from Plum Village, and for those who are not aware, so that's in France, where Thai um, lived, and he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. And by the way, I had a chance to do a 1 week with him that just kind of blew me away. How soft, gentle. There's periods where I was like, "Let's go." I want like my hardcore meditation. Let's go, and it was gentle and soft, but it pierced through me. It was 1 week. It was just 1 week, but it just blew me. So, can you share more about these different ideas so we can make them super practical for listeners? So, you learned some things there. Can you say
Yeah.
any more about that?
And I think that's this key word as we think about what are the knowledge streams we want to draw upon, both as
Mm,
individuals, as societies, as a global human family. You know, we've talked at this moment in time, the world is a bit on fire. In the
yeah.
face of crisis, Thich Nhat Hanh would ask, in the face of crisis, and when everything feels urgent, do you know what to do?
Ah,
And this comes from someone who lived through the American War in Vietnam or the
yeah.
Vietnamese War, depending on your, you may call it something, depending on your social cultural location. This is someone who, during that time, organized youth across the country to rebuild schools, to do
Mm,
social work. He created the School for Youth for Social Services, refused to take a side in the war, was exiled because of that, but really deeply
mm,
looked at what does it mean to care for ourselves as a collective family, to have no enemies, no sides. So this call for peace work was how he connected to Martin Luther King, who wound
mm.
up writing a letter to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. And the two of them bonded over this idea of beloved community. And this brings me back to your question, what are these trainings? And so I
Yeah.
think, we can get caught up in like, oh, Buddhist psychology is this thing over here and science is over here. And as I said, I like to bring the knowledge together. And to me, at the heart of Buddhist psychology is this proposal. And we always say
Mm,
Buddhist psychology is like science in the sense of like, don't take our word for it. Zen are like, don't take my word for it. The Zen tradition would say, like, you can hear a song about a peach. You can rub a peach on your face. If you don't bite the peach, you don't know what it tastes like. So we
yeah.
are in this psychology, we're a bunch of implementation scientists. We're gonna, if you're listening to this, I may sound like I'm talking a bunch of theory right now. We're gonna get real practical soon. Like we want you to
Right.
bite the peach. We're not just talking about it. We're not just theorizing. We're like, we're trying to do the thing. We're trying to implement. And so
Yeah.
that's what I love about your question. What are the trainings?
Yeah.
Because at the heart of this is not, Buddhist psychology is not interested in theory. We're not interested in
Mm,
describing a truth or version of reality. What we are
right.
interested in getting at deeply is it useful? And the research question is, there is suffering. We're not interested in suppressing it or ignoring it. We are
Mm,
interested in training ourselves and equipping ourselves to be strong enough to turn towards the suffering and embrace it in order to transform it into wellness. That we deeply recognize like suffering, challenge, difficulty, this is part of being human. We have to be allowed to be messy.
mm,
We have to. And the trainings are like, how do you equip yourself to have the strength to be a mess, to embrace that mess, and to train forward. And so one of the Buddhist monks I work with said to me about the what's going on in the world, where he was like, well, training wheels off. This is what we've been training for.
It's for life. It's
It's for life.
that's absolutely, yeah, exactly. Like, what good is it if it's just a theory, and what good is it if it's just on the cushion? I think that's a misconception sometimes of practicing mindfulness or meditation. It's like, oh yeah, it's a check mark. I sat for my whatever, how long, 20, 30 minutes, 40, whatever it is, check, done. And now I'll go back to being stressed and anxious and
Yeah,
like
well, and I work, we discussed, for those hanging out with us right now, another area that I do, one of my actually main program of research is bringing these teachings. Specifically, I designed a program that we've published findings on in CMAJ Open, which is our kind of highest level biomedical journal in Canada, co-authored with the former Dean of Medicine here at U of T, now our provost, findings on a program that's specifically rooted in Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching. So we wanted to really be studying, rather than a generic mindfulness, we wanted to, do engaged and applied mindfulness. And it brings me back to your point there, which is I do qualitative research. We do mixed methods, but this was primarily a qualitative study,
Mm.
interviewing physicians, finding out how they applied it, where they applied it. And, we hear over and over from physicians in this study, and probably lots of folks listening will relate, this idea mindfulness is sitting on a cushion for 20 minutes with your eyes closed, and then you just kind of hope it holds. And
Yes.
I just want it for the neuroscientists listening. I just want to, or the evidence base, I want to be clear, sitting with your eyes closed for 20 minutes will change the functional and structural components of your brain. It's like great to do.
Yeah.
And it's not the only thing. Mindfulness goes way
Mm.
beyond that. And in fact, the assignment from Buddhist psychology is don't stop at the internal work that increases wellness and can, modulate and monitor and modify our anxiety and stress. Like we really want that. And the assignment is like you do that in order to go into the world and do the
Mm.
really important work. That we want to be activists, that we want to ask questions, that we want to be scientists. We need all of us like doing that work. And it's not like an individualistic stress reduction only, assignment.
Right. So it's about connecting again with community and the world. It's not just sometimes this misunderstanding of just going to get self-absorbed. It's kind of selfish. I'm going to sit, take time for me. But it's actually, one of the things that really kind of shook me is when I got what this is about. Because I meditated for years, and it wasn't really until I got to be with John Kabat-Zinn in a retreat. For some reason, there was a way that he, he was just sharing this work that I really got. This is about waking up to life, waking up to how we're living, waking up to how we are, waking up to how we deal with a neighbor, waking up how we deal with our pets, our family, our friends. So that's really powerful. I just want to ask you something first, because I'm taking myself back to my own journey. For some people, they may think like, "Oh, well, I'm not a Buddhist, so like that's Buddhist psychology stuff. That might be going against my beliefs here." And I know for me, when I first looked at it that way, like 30 something years ago, I don't know if I would have been as open because, and then slowly over time, I'm like, this is about being human. This is about being human. This is not. It doesn't matter what your belief are. This is like humanity. So I wonder, what do you think? What do you tell folks who go, "Oh, Buddhist psychology"? Well, I'm not a Buddhist.
Yeah. And then yeah, big bucket. And I'll answer the question specifically. And I just wanted to reflect first off, like John Kabat-Zinn, I was hanging out with him at Dartmouth a little while ago. We were doing this the Buddha, the Scientist retreat, and a bunch of like the Zen Buddhist monks from Thich Nhat Hanh Center in California had organized it. And it was hosted by the medical school there, and John's there. And it was just this like amazing kind of, yeah, celebration of like, what does it
Mm,
mean to take the time to retrain ourselves in being human? To do
mm,
that in community. And I'll say, like the physicians who go through my studies, one of our findings, I'm running a cohort right now,
mm,
and it's rooted in Buddhist psychology and Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. And we give them the citation, and it's not a belief system, right? Like the Buddha, there was no Buddhism when the Buddha was teaching. We can say there was like this historic figure that, looked into the nature of suffering and challenge and came up with like a systematic training pathway for wellness. And so that in of itself is not a belief system. It doesn't ask you to put aside, it can be complementary to a religion or no religion. It's really an
Right.
open source set of knowledge. And there's actually a great quote from the Dalai Lama from one of his books, who,
Mm.
is the leader of one of the social cultural contexts that this body of knowledge is taken up as a religion, has said very clearly Buddhist
Mm.
philosophy or psychology and Buddhist science is for everyone. And
Yes.
Buddhist religion is for those who choose to practice it as a religion. We have full respect for those who use it as a philosophy and psychology, and for religious freedom and those who do not practice a religion. So there's, and we're humans, nothing's perfectly binary in this world. We're all on a
Right.
spectrum. Any day I'm on the spectrum of how mindful I am. What is religion? I mean, these are big, big topics. But in this kind of bite-sized way, that we recognize
Mm.
that this is a body of knowledge that is not proposed as a religion or
Mhm.
belief-based system. It's a pragmatic approach to addressing suffering and cultivating wellness. And there are social cultural contexts that it is taken up in different ways. So it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure. With, in the spirit of science, please do cite your sources. If you are a
Mm.
researcher using this knowledge, please say where it comes from. If you are a practitioner, look into it. It's like
Yeah.
any field of knowledge production. Let us be in the spirit of citation, of honoring those who came before us. My librarian at U of T, Jeff Newman, just gave a talk on citation as a gratitude practice. As a scholar, every person you're citing is an
Yes.
ancestor whose wisdom you're drawing upon. So we can play with both ways of looking. And I also think a warm invitation for anyone who wants to like cook up their lives with this thought technology of how to be human, like please do.
It's time for a quick little update. A few months ago, 2.5% of you who are watching this content were subscribed to this channel. I'm so grateful to you. You helped us move it to 20%. However, if we do the math, that still leaves us 80% of you have not subscribed. Please help me change that. Go ahead and press that subscribe button. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the content. Oh, what a wonderful way of saying it. Thought technology. Like, wow, I haven't heard mentioned that with thought technology, because it's like something that's kind of supports us in shifting. Like technology can help us make our life better. Of course, it has, negative things, but technology can help us make life better. So here's a thought technology. When you're saying this, one of the things that surprised me about the possibility of humanity is, as I was doing my teacher training at the time at UMass Medical School for mindfulness based stress reduction, as I got to see different people from all various backgrounds and countries in the teacher training path, from a Muslim scholar to a rabbi to a reverend to everyone in between in different professions. And I thought, wow, this actually helps us be more of who we are. Like, whatever our beliefs are, just be more like be more of you and be even more human. Like, who couldn't benefit from this?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're all like, we are all products of, we call in Buddhist psychology, we would say we're made up of non-self elements. We really recognize, if anyone's ever heard the teaching of emptiness or non-self, can sound nihilistic or kind of out there. The Buddhists are implementation scientists. Like, if you hear a weird word, by the way, ever, just like look into it more deeply. Usually it actually is trying to say something super practical. So we're like,
Mm.
there's no self. And like, whoa, that's out there. And then it's like, no, we're just trying to very practically be like, there's no separate self. It's like this like Zen hurdle joke. It's like no
Mm.
self. It's just that there isn't this like separate individual. It's to recognize that we're all interconnected. And the reason I
Mm.
brought that up as you said that, is we're made up of non-self elements. That's what we want to recognize. I'm the
Mm.
product of my education, my social cultural context. If the trees didn't exist without oxygen, I wouldn't be here. So I'm also made up of the trees and the oxygen. Like, there's a lot of,
Mm.
interbeing going on here, as Ty would say it.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think what's important about that, is just, as you mentioned, like, what are the elements in me that are not mine, that I haven't chosen? How are they pushing and pulling my habit energies, how I interact with other
Mm.
people? And when I can look deeply, with these eyes of interbeing and see that I'm not separate, It changes
Mm.
the way I make in and out group distinctions, right? So, to perpetrate violence on another person or the planet probably
Mm.
requires me to think of them as the other. And so there's
Right.
also this interesting piece of like how my neural pathways and connections are built to survive, and like, is that actually wise thriving, right? What does that mean for us
Mm.
as a human family, as earthlings on this planet? How does our way of looking at the world, of narrating those stories, interact with our neurobiological mechanisms of survival? And
Yes.
how can we have the technology to really, like, sometimes not like override, I don't want to be like violent to myself, but like to see what's
Yeah.
going on and take care of it.
Yes. And I'd love to go into, you're talking about the trainings that you had and making this kind of, okay, how do we apply this? But it's making me think like right now, at least at the time of this recording, war is happening. And there's an othering, and there's always, people having different political views. This is the right way, or this is these people, and so much separation. And it's like, oh, how do we how do these teachings help us in a time where, like, we're watching the media is just, just pain and suffering and
Yeah.
um, disconnect.
Yeah. And there is, and I think I'm often asked, like, how do you have hope at a time like this?
Mm, yeah.
um, and for me, part of it is these trainings. So I'll share a very practical framework in a moment. Remind
Please,
me about the
yes.
core instruments in terms of how we consume the news. I've got a practical top hit from those who go through my research studies. This is one of the kind of scholarly frameworks of Buddhist psychology that everyone's like, I use that one. So bring me back to that. And I
Let's
also,
do it.
right, we're going to do it. But I also want to say, like, a piece of hope is, for example, and coming back to your, to be careful, like, I want to always think coming inwards, that self-care of sitting on the
Mm,
meditation cushion or following a practice, noticing your breath, going outside and noticing the sunshine and noticing every step just for one block instead of consuming all your projects and worries and fears, is not selfish.
mm,
Because the ability to stabilize within, to give our nervous systems a moment to calm when the world is pushing us to be active nervous systems are what puts us in fight or flight. And so, as a
mm,
society, when we're constantly consuming fear, when we're watering that seed in ourselves, then each one of us steps forward more likely to cause harm. If you look at the
mm,
evidence base, the way we have perspective taking, the way we bring people into our sphere of safety, is this ability. So Ty would say the way out is in. In order to take care of others,
mm.
we must take care of ourselves. And the good news is when we take care of our inner landscape, that's our N of one. That is the common denominator in
Wow.
every interaction we're having. And so I think a piece of hope is in myself and in my colleagues, in the communities I'm in, that I see there is this group of humans that are doing this training and work, that are training their inner
Mm,
selves to be peace, training themselves to be stable so they can go write policy, like go out on the streets and protest, do
yeah.
the research needed. Like, we would say, bodhisattvas is the kind of Buddhist term for being of great action. We need every bodhisattva we can get on my undergrads who are doing conservation biology, like the ones who are doing conflict and peace studies, the ones that are doing equity studies, the ones that are doing basic science that's helping us understand vaccines for pandemics. Like, I need every one of these bodhisattvas. And they're in my classes. I get to teach like a fourth year research methodologies course on mindfulness. And I get students from across the arts and sciences, 19 to 24. And
Mm,
they come to these classes because they're interested in how Buddhist psychology can be a value add to their field. I have an
mm.
engineer who's gone on to do a PhD in engineering, thinking about how to love the planet as you're designing as an engineer because of
Oh,
my
wow.
class. I have students who go on to med school who tell me that when they took the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, they rewrote it for themselves based on my courses to write what it means to do no harm within if they aren't perfect
Mm.
as a physician so they can love their patients fully. And
Oh,
so
wow.
for me, like, this uptake of this thought technology in these different spaces where each one of us has a sphere of influence, like every person listening to this podcast, there's somewhere you're a leader. There's somewhere you have a sphere of influence at your work, with your
Mm.
families. And so this invitation, if you're, mindfulness curious, Buddhist curious, like whatever you're like, if you're towing in or a long-term practitioner, we need every one of you bodhisattvas to learn how to stabilize within. Look, we have the whole great scientific evidence
Mm.
base for what this does, so that you can go into the world, into your spheres of influence, into your disciplines, and like be peace, be skillful communication. Because
Mm.
without you, then we just have a world where we're all operating out of like fear, and that's what leads to
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're describing really all hands on deck, and right, all hands on deck, and in a way to do so from a wise place, from a place of practice, as you shared so beautifully. This saying from Thai, this kind of the way out is in. Like, we have to connect with ourselves to take wise action in the world, peaceful action. Not, and I think that's a misconception. Oh, meditates is just separate. It's actually to take sometimes fierce action, but from a place of love, not from a place of hate or reactivity, which is so easy to get into.
Oh, so like our
Ugh.
listen, I would say the brain is set up for survival, right? So like it's trying to help us. It's trying to be like, "Oh, I'm scared. Let me take your executive function offline and I will redivert all of your, energy and systems to getting you ready to run or fight." And you're like, "Thank you, brain. Thank you so much." Except we now in research have paper tigers, which is like you can have that same cortisol chemical response to being like afraid of like a difficult email or an exam, and then your
Mhm.
body's taking you offline, and you're like, you're trying to write policy as world leaders at like the climate talks. We had Zen monks there speaking with the world leaders who are just
Amazing.
so activated, and so like it's like you're trying to write policy when your prefrontal cortex is offline. We're not helping anyone. And so, one of the outcomes of a meditative practice is to bring your prefrontal cortex online, which
Mm.
cools your amygdala, right? Your parasympathetic system can help let you know you're
Yeah.
safe. And then you can engage. Like, it is a superpower. It's funny. I was talking to the monks I work with. We used to, 5, 10 years ago, right? You're like, you want to defend mindfulness. Like, don't worry, it won't make you soft. This is fierce. It's fierce compassion, which is great. And recently, someone he flipped the script. This is Brother Phaphu. He runs the Way Out Is In podcast with Joe Confino, former Huffington Post editor, and a great friend of mine, Brother Phaphu.
Mhm.
He's taking care of Upper Hamlet now, Thai's main center in France. And he
Uh-huh.
said to me the other day, he flipped the script. Someone was like, "Is mindfulness going to make me soft?" And we used to, no, don't worry. And he went, "Yes. And do you think the world could use a little more softness right now?" And
Mm.
soft, not as in we don't take action, right? But what if that action was taken from a place of stability, of
Mm.
calm, of inclusivity, right? And we know inclusivity from a neuroscience perspective requires us to foster a space of safety, right?
Mm.
Like protection is not safety. And our brains like to conflate that in our like, survival mode.
Ah, can you say more about that? Protection is not safety in terms of
Yeah. So
my
our
right.
Yeah, and it kind of drawing upon, many disciplines talking about this from like a
Mm.
kind of neuroscience, neurobiological perspective. When we're in protector mode, that is most likely, we've got the chemicals in our body, fight or flight,
Mm.
ready to go, prefrontal cortex offline, which is what helps like downgrade us and make wise decisions. So we've
Yes.
got that version of protection. Then if we're looking at maybe some trauma informed lenses, right? What does it mean to have gone through something? And when we put our protectors up, right, we're offline, we're disengaged. This is not going to lead to pro-social
Right.
behavior, right? And then we go all the way over to our Buddhist psychology, and we're talking, our protectors are the ones that kind of come from what we would call our manas, the self referential. I always say this looks like self referential processing, which is like, am I safe? Am I not? Do I attack? And
Mm.
so many of our practices, our trainings, are pragmatically designed to calm the nervous system enough that we can be back online, move from
Mm.
I have to protect myself, which means I'm not listening. I'm, in like boundaries up zone, which I will say if you're listening, there are really healthy and good reasons to protect ourselves. So I want to
Right.
be careful.
Right.
We're not
Yes.
saying there aren't spaces that aren't safe. And we're
Mm.
saying when you go to take action, like write a policy, design a new technology, talk with your children, ideally,
Right.
we're in a place of safety. Our system says, I'm safe. I can put my boundaries down. My chemicals don't have to push through my body. This means I can sleep well. This means I can
Mm.
listen well. This means I can articulate well. And this means I
Right.
can, like one of the physicians in my study right now, we've been teaching taking these micro practices. Just take a moment to really
Mm.
notice where you are and that you're safe. And so they started every morning when they buckle their kid into their car seat, that's their bell, their moment of mindfulness.
Yes.
And when they do that, usually it's a frustrated moment. Their kids scrambling, they're trying to get to work. They're like, oh, and so they changed. They took the thought technology that we were training to attend to the present moment with kindness and curiosity. To take a moment to not be thinking about all your projects and worries, which is fine. Mindfulness is not saying to never
Mm.
think about the future and the past.
But
We're
to
saying
have
we want
choice.
some moments to train this. So they
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
training themselves every day by taking the moment that they buckle their kid in to notice every sound, to be appreciative of keeping their child
Mm.
safe, to notice in that moment that they were safe. And then they were accounting that when they got to work, they were friendlier to their patients and colleagues.
Ah. So actually very practical, like practically saying micro little ways of being present, just being present right there with just buckling up your child, or putting on the jacket, or what, like little things we're doing anyway in our day, but to use those as reminders, just to breathe, to look around, to go, all is well, right, this moment is okay, actually, right, like right here, I'm okay,
Yeah.
right here.
And
Yeah.
it's simple. It's not easy. Like if you're going to try
Right,
this and
right,
you're
right, right.
listening, or even if you're like, I've been doing this for over 25 years, simple, not easy.
Yeah.
And exactly what you just said, right? Let's go back to the beginning of our conversation. What do we know what to do when the world is on fire and everything feels urgent? And
Mm.
our neurobiological systems are built when everything feels urgent to get us ready to run or fight. And so, in the face of being pushed by that, when everything is urgent, can I do the thing that makes no sense on paper to not run or fight, right? I want to rush, I want to fix it, I want to change it. And what the evidence shows us, and what's really at the heart of this thought
Mm.
technology is, and this is a proposal, as we said, don't take my word for it. When I get activated by a difficult email, by news that is scary,
Mm.
by my child screaming, or like a colleague saying something mean, or hearing there are budget cuts, like whatever the activator is that feels unsafe to me,
Yes.
right? In the face of external stimuli that feels unsafe, that's that moment that it feels urgent, right?
Mm.
Do I know what to do? And the proposal on the table for Buddhist psychology is come back to the present moment and reestablish safety in yourself first so you can respond wisely instead of reacting. Because
Mm.
reactivity is violent, it's angry. And we're not saying to never be angry, but like if you feel angry, excellent. You're hearing that there's
Mm.
something to take care of. And before you
Mm.
act, like take that moment for your nervous system. So make a direct connection. It's not selfish, it's not running away, to go for a walk and notice the sunshine, to eat a delicious ice cream, to take that
Mm.
moment. It can feel very weird. Like you're going to go breathe instead of like put out a public statement about this thing that just happened. Yeah, I'm going to do that because when I take the action, it's so much wiser. It's so much more inclusive. It's going to have, you can go yell at the other person, but like, do you really get
Yeah.
anywhere? Like, you want to like really crush that bargaining table, like go in with the superpower of stability and clarity, mess everybody up.
Mm.
And so that's really that practical piece is do not discount the power of bringing yourself online. And that to do that, if we are constantly playing our worries, our fears, we're just continuing to activate those chemicals that get us ready to run or fight. And so,
Mm.
as you said, like walking outside and noticing the sunshine can sound really like woo woo.
Mm.
And yet, that's what we need as humans to like reconnect and downgrade our nervous system. So we say disconnect
Yeah.
to reconnect more fully.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to quickly thank you for stopping by and watching this content. It truly means the world to me that you're interested in creating positive change. I also want to invite you to join our amazing community I have free events online about mindfulness, mindfulness based stress reduction, laughter, as well as retreats that you can do from the comfort of your own home. And are you ready for this? Self paced program that you can do about mindfulness and stress reduction. So you can join the newsletter below to stay up to date on all these goodies. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and press that button. It really helps me to keep this content going and reach out to more guests. Thank you so much again, and may you continue enjoying watching this episode. You know, this whole thing about senses, I know I had a conversation with Zindel Siegel about that, and how it's just being in the senses. Like there's something, it's not about shutting down the brain, right? Sometimes we think I just have to, oh, I'm not doing mindfulness right, or something wrong with my brain, it's not stopping. And it's not about stopping the brain, but it's about connecting to our senses. Like
Yes.
that's the sight, the sound you're naming, which is available. Like, and it's encouraging.
Free. It's not behind a paywall. Your senses are not behind a paywall. You can access them. And I'll just say also
Yeah.
love Zindel and Norm, their recent book talking about sensory foraging and how to
Yes.
use these amazing tools we have. And I think, we were talking, I like to propose, I think there can be a misconception that mindfulness is about emptying the mind.
Yeah.
I do. This doesn't stop functioning. Like that's not. So I've been proposing more. Perhaps this training is very much more Buddhist psychology is really proposing not that we empty the mind, but
Right.
to ask the question, what are we filling our mind with? And
Hmm.
that is a place we have real agency. Back to your question, like if you are just doom scrolling all day, you are letting
Yeah.
someone else co-opt what is filling your mind, and you are filling it with fear and violence. And I'm not saying to not follow the news, but this brings me back to the four nutriments teaching, this very practical teaching in Buddhist
Yeah.
psychology. It proposes looking the four nutriments proposes that we nourish ourselves and are made up, and we consume more beyond edible food. And to really think
Hmm.
about that, like what are you consuming, which is essentially
Hmm.
what are you filling your mind with beyond edible food, like what we hear, what we read. These are things
Right.
we're
What we take in.
consuming. We're taking them in, and if we're not aware, then what are you filling your mind with?
Hmm.
Junk food? Is it healthy? Are you making yourself healthy?
Right. Often it's kind of automatic, like if it's social media, or whatever we're taking in our environment and our spaces, and you're saying, wait, this actually, let's look into what we're taking in. And before you share more about these four beautiful ways you describe the training, I love how you described it as superpower of clarity. Like, wow, it's kind of, when we have clarity instead of reactivity, and to get clarity we're needing to take a bit of a pause. And that's one of the reasons I call this podcast as Pause to Elevate. Pause does not require, like, oh, I'm too busy to pause. It might be a split second. Just hold, wait, what's happening? And now we can be in the moment. Even like you said, if anger is here, well, I'm human, but what am I doing with the anger? Am I yelling at someone, or am I letting myself feel it and let it move through me like a cloud? Like, what am I doing with it? That's the clarity, right? So that you're speaking about. So I wonder, you have this program that you're researching as well with physicians. So can you go over these couple of different trainings and kind of the top things that people really, stuck with them? And I
Yeah,
know physicians are quite burned out. And so, I mean, we're all burned out, but I think we all could benefit from what they're learning.
exactly. And this is, one of the reasons I was interested in working with that population was just knowing, yeah, the level of burnout that's, being recognized. And also that physicians are this interesting group. They're really used to learning about and taking up best practices. And many of them actually come into the program highly skeptical, which I also love. Like as a
Mm.
researcher, I want to be working with folks who are going to ask like excellent questions to
Yes.
what I'm researching, not just
Yeah.
accept it. And also though are trained. Like if they look into
Mm.
it and they apply it and it works, they do it. So
They
it's a
take it on.
fascinating, yeah, they take it on. So a fascinating group to work with. And I built this 5-week program, 2 hours a week, coding introductory retreats by Thich Nhat Hanh to see what was the order of trainings he provided, What are the different learning
Mm.
modalities? So each 2 hour session is made up of some different learning modalities, some didactic lecture. So you hear some of the
Mhm.
scholarship and theory behind this work,
Mhm.
drawing upon Buddhist psychology. Then you get a practical hands-on activity, so those experiential things,
Mhm.
beyond sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed. So,
Right.
Tai was really interested in like apply this to your eating, to your speaking, to your walking, like things you
Mm.
do every day so that you can integrate it. One of the physicians said at cost neutral times, right? You're walking to the building, you're walking from the hospital to your car anyway.
Yeah.
What if that moment, you don't have to walk mindfully all day. That's just none of us are doing that. And can you set, if you're listening now, like an experiment, is there one block or between the car and the office that you can
Mm.
make your mindful block? That just for that one block, and this is one of the physician's favorite things is like pick a block, a hallway in the, in the hospital, in
Mhm.
your classroom, like where's somewhere you pass every day where when you walk there, you're going to deeply set an intention to stop thinking about future, past, or other projects and just notice, Zindel and Norm, like forage with your senses. Notice
Yeah.
the colors, the smells, the texture. And I almost don't want to tell you if you're listening, like do the experiment without me telling you the findings if you don't know them. But do this a few times because again, it's about these micro moments of calming our nervous system enough to
Mm.
see clearly what's here. If we don't know what's here, we can't take care of it. And then we walk into situations and like blow up at our families because we had a difficult day and didn't realize how it was affecting us. And so, the metaphor is a little like if you take a snow globe and you shake it all day and you're shaking it with like your worries and your fears and your emails and your text messages and the news, it's very blurry in there. And if you put it down on a table and just give it that moment to rest, right? That's that moment where you're
Mm.
walking and just noticing that you're walking. Then the snow naturally settles and you
Yeah.
can you can see what's there. Um, it doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden be instantaneously like calm. You're like sometimes you're like the mindfulness didn't work. I'm now anxious. I'm like no, the anxious was there.
Yeah.
A plus on the mindfulness. You've calmed your system enough to notice. So that's one of the hits from the physicians is we just look at what are
Mm.
daily activities and how can we apply the basic foundational practice of nervous system calming by attending to the present, taking a
Right.
rest from our worries and fears of future and past before we get back to them. And so the kind
Mm.
of bicep curl here is just, yeah, is it walking to your car? Is it during brushing your teeth just to notice where the
Mm.
mind is and start training yourself to have a few moments of like rest and ease?
Mm. It's so available to all of us because I mean we're living our lives. So this is, it's like it's already happening. We don't have to create this, separate time. And it makes me think, of a formal versus informal, so to speak, practice in terms of meditation, mindfulness. It's we can carve out time to do our sitting practice, and here's now we take it out from the cushion or chair or whatever, however we practice, to being present in moments in our life. And actually, the brushing teeth, it's one that surprises people. I share it in the MBSR, or mindfulness based stress reduction program. I just ask people, just be curious, next time you brush your teeth, where is the mind? And
Right.
is it possible to come back to your teeth? Like, actually, can you sense like the upper teeth rather than the lower teeth when you're brushing teeth? Can you sense before toothpaste enters the mouth? You know what I mean? Like all these moments, and we don't have to slow it down, but they're there. Yeah. So
And
here's
even,
these skills.
even on teeth too, Tai like to say also to do the non-toothache meditation. So, teeth brushing can be this moment to anchor focused attention, right? FA, one of the kind of research
Yes.
foundational pillars. So we can use the sensation of teeth as a focused attention practice. We can also expand the
Mm,
practice to be a gratitude practice, which starts to, activate parts of the brain linked to connection, linked to
mm,
compassion, to say like, in that moment brushing your teeth, like I have teeth to eat. I don't
yeah.
have, so I would say we as humans, like if you had a toothache, you'd be super focused on it. It would take over your whole day. It would make it awful, right? But then as soon as you don't have one, you're like not even paying attention to the fact that I don't have a toothache. And like here you have this opportunity. We say like turn some neutrals into positives, right? And so if you're
Mm,
brushing your teeth to recognize I don't have a toothache right now, you can
mm.
actually have this moment of like, oh, things are that's great. Like I can water some goodness in my day.
Mm. Oh, watering some goodness, but first we have to recognize it. And I love how you're sharing this. Like we're watering goodness by recognizing we don't have a toothache, but first we got to realize, oh, it's actually nice not to have a toothache. Like, why do we wait until toothache happens? Then we go, I just want the toothache to be over and then life will be great. And then we forget. We have somehow we have like this quick forgetting.
We have a quick forgetting and we have a negativity bias from,
Yeah.
again, that kind of neuroscience, scientific side, right? It's way more helpful to remember where danger is for survival than to notice a beautiful flower.
Mm.
So again, we thank our brains for helping us survive. And then there's some work we have to do to be like,
Yeah.
right, notice the goodness.
Yeah. So actually, what you're saying is making me think of two things. One of them is conditioning. We all have conditioning, and how that conditioning we can get lost in it so quickly. And sometimes we learn things for good reason, but maybe it's not helping us. And then it makes us delay happiness. Like I just got to finish the project, excuse me, to feel happy. I just got to finish this thing, or I just got to sell the car or buy the car or meet someone or leave someone. And maybe it's true, but always delaying. Like the true happiness is always, what about that? What do these teachings tell us about that?
So much. Buddhists, we love talking about happiness. And
Mm.
not, again, I always want to be careful. It's not that we're ignoring, suppressing, or just
Yeah.
like pretending we're happy. In fact, we're doing the opposite, right? We're turning towards, we're embracing. And like, why are we doing all this work? Like sometimes people miss the assignment, think like Buddhism is all about suffering. And it's like, actually,
Right.
we're really interested in suffering because we have this hope that we can cultivate happiness, and that we would
Mm.
say, Tai would say, do not wait for all suffering to disappear in order to touch happiness. We would say, in every moment, there are conditions for happiness. Do we know how to find them? And it's such a gift. We have this teaching called multiple truths, which is
Mm.
to hold many things as true and not categorize them as better or worse or good or bad, to train
Ah.
the uncomparative mind. And what I love about this
Mm.
is, can I, in one moment, I love to troll my husband, Rob. He's also a practitioner. He does like mindfulness informed physiotherapy, so he'll be fine with this. I love to troll him and say, like, it is possible that I can love my husband, and it can be equally true in that moment that I'm really frustrated with him.
Yeah.
Like, that's just true.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so important to give ourselves permission to be messy and to have those truths. And so the same thing with happiness. The
Mm.
example I want to share was, I was actually traveling with Thich Nhat Hanh and his community in the UK. We
Mm.
were going into schools doing retreats for educators. I think this was in 2012.
Wow.
And I was with them on a day that I was leading a workshop in the afternoon on loss and grief and how these practices helped. And I woke up that morning and found out that my grandmother had passed away.
Oh.
And I was in the UK. She was in the United States at the time. And I felt this, I mean, obviously, like deep grief and loss. I felt
Mm.
guilt over not being there with my family. I had a lot of strong emotions.
Mm.
Um, and I was enveloped in a hug by some of the monastics I was traveling with and working with. And afterwards, one of them asked me, just, Ellie, what is true right now? What's true? And
Mm.
I was in this state, but I got to say, it is true that I am incredibly sad. It is true that I feel guilty and terrible not being there. It's true that I am super excited to leave a workshop today. It's true that I have like joy in the coffee that someone's just handed me.
Mm.
It's true that I'm like, I'm actually really happy I'm here and doing this work with you. And it was so interesting because part of me, it felt invalid or wrong to feel any happiness in that moment,
Ah.
right? And yet that permission I have from this idea of multiple truths, that we are
Mm.
permitted in the ontology epistemology, if you want the academic words, but just in the viewpoint, the perspective of Buddhist psychology, we are given permission to touch
Mm.
happiness, big or small, in any moment. And that actually by touching this, we stabilize ourselves enough to hold our grief, to hold others' grief. If we just fall into the grief, it's not to suppress it, but we want that permission to also notice the conditions for happiness. And so that, when you ask, there's so many teachings on happiness, I've just picked one, but it's to say, yeah, can we see the conditions for happiness that exist right now?
Mm.
Can we give ourselves permission to
Yeah.
hold them? Even when we know there's violence in the world, it can be like, how am I allowed to enjoy this ice cream if I know a war is happening? And it's
Mm.
like, please enjoy that ice cream
Yeah.
so that you can make the calls to stop that war, so you can hold your children who are scared, like, please, please nourish your happiness so you can
Mm.
be stable enough to be the humans we need in this world.
Yes. How beautifully said. So it's more about so we can be more for others in the world. When we connect with our happiness that's available to us while we're holding on to experiencing whatever it is, it could be sorrow, grief, sadness. And that's it's kind of very non-dual, you know, in this, like you can have
We're in
both. You can
non-dualism. We're in the
yeah,
vibe of non-dualism.
love it is. We can have both. Like we're allowed to feel angry or sad or sorrow and be happy. Like it's not just like pick one. Like why do
Yeah.
we pick one? Like,
Right.
and then I think the wisdom of what you're sharing as well is while you might be feeling sad or sorrow or hopeless or helpless, what's happening in the world, is you can feel that, but still choose to water the seed of happiness. Choose to enjoy that ice cream. Choose to smile with someone. Like choose to nurture yourself so you can be that container that holds your own pain as well, and then we can hold the pain of others. So
Yeah.
that, like it's expanding that container, so to speak.
Exactly. Like, if we want to
Yeah.
see peace in the world, can we be that peace right now?
You know, you remind me. I had a conversation with Zen teacher Claude Anshin Thomas, and he said he had a beautiful way of saying it. You know, about peace. We're talking about peace, and this is a couple of years ago, and we're talking about peace and war. Can't remember, some war was happening a couple of years ago as well, and he said, you know, and he went through Vietnam and seeing the horrors, and he talked about, you know, he learned to be at peace with his lack of peace, like being
Yeah.
peace with lack of peacefulness. It's not getting rid of lack of peace. It's being with both, and it's kind of what you're saying actually. Uh, we can have both.
Yeah. And John
Yeah.
Kabat-Zinn says, we can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf them. And I think that's
Yeah.
really this training that we're doing, right? Is we're not training in mindfulness to never become angry, but to meet our anger with our full heart
Mm,
and skillfulness. We're not training in, you know, peace to like only be in a peaceful world. We're training peace in ourselves to meet the violence, right? With
mm.
skill, with that superpower of clarity. And so that's really, I think, at the heart of this training, that like the way out is in. You know,
Yeah.
I'm the common denominator. We say, like, as scientists, if you use a microscope to do your research, you're going to keep it in very excellent
Mm,
condition. And so as humans, if you do a human-centered job, you're a clinician, you're a teacher, or just, you have a family, as I said, then the main tool of your work there is you. So just
yeah.
like that scientist keeps the microscope in very good condition, you know how to keep the tool of you in very good
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah. We got to take care of ourselves to take care of anyone else. Yeah. And I keep going back to what you said, which really struck me, the superpower of clarity and stability, the combination clarity and stability. It's like, yes, this is what it's supporting. Stability in the middle of change and ups and downs, and stability, and kindness, and then bringing some gratitude, all of
Yeah.
it. So you gave us a little preview, right? Yeah, it kind of builds up, right? You gave us a preview of all the different things that the physicians are learning, which anyone can learn. And you spoke a little bit about the outcomes, and maybe we can give people a little bit about the outcome. What kind of things? Because people love, like, okay, this sounds good, but does it work?
Does it
Does it
work?
work?
Yeah. And we have such this rich growing body of evidence, and what I see in the studies and what's accounted. First off, I do thematic analysis of all of these interviews. And one is just that it's truly not an additional burden in life, that these
Mm,
micro doses of mindfulness that can be integrated throughout the day, we're calling it engaged and applied mindfulness,
mm,
are really effective for kind of permeating life. And the overall thematic finding we found is mindfulness becomes a way of life. That it is
mm.
not, the separate thing on a cushion that just holds. One of the findings from the participants was like, turns out it's on demand. Like, I can just like flip it on. And this interesting thing, different physicians in different specialties find where are the places they put them in their context? So
Mm,
surgeons do it while the operating room is being cleaned, family physicians while they're in their room taking some notes, nurses while they're, sanitizing their hands. And so if you're listening, it's kind of this question like, you are the most expert researcher on your own life. I say,
mm,
like, my longest term research project is myself. And so my question, if you're listening, is like, design and run your own experiment. Where are the micro places in your day that you might place some of this? Start
mm,
doing it. I assign this to my students. Keep a log, see what outcomes you find,
mm,
and see if they line up to mine. So you can look up our article, Weisbaum, qualitative research, CMAJ Open, and the findings there looking at how it shifts like cognitive narratives to enhance wellness
mm,
throughout the day. The physicians are really accounting. I had a surgeon say they wanted to steal the bell because it was helping across their interactions with patients, their
mm,
colleagues, their families. Like, we're seeing enhanced interpersonal communication from the application of these skill sets. And the findings are incredibly promising. But like I said, Zen says, don't take my word for it. Like, do your own experiment, and I'll say that research paper has all the top hit practices and like mini guidance to them. So it just
mm.
like, go out and please experiment, because we need every one of us who knows how to cultivate peace in this world right now.
Yeah, it's so needed. It is so needed more than ever. Absolutely. And there's so many more things I want to ask you. I know we're just getting to the end of our time. I thought I knew this is just going to fly by because there's so much. You're such like a true practitioner and a true scientist, and it's like you have both so such depth in both of them, and I think that's what makes it so lively, so real. It's not, you're not just like disconnected and talking about research, and you're not just practicing like, oh, I don't care about the research. You're like both. So really, I really want to thank you. And I just have one more thing I want to ask you, which is, and then we'll let folks know where they can find you. But the name of a podcast is Pause to Elevate. So I'm wondering, you've shared it so many times already, but when you think of pause to elevate, what does that mean to you?
Well, I will pause for a moment to give myself permission to think about that so I can have
Mm,
clarity. Yeah, I was inspired when I heard that, because I think this term, like a purposeful pause, that, as I said,
mm,
our systems are built to push us, to run us into
mm,
urgency and fighting in the face of challenge. And
mhm,
again, this superpower in the face of everything that's coming at me, to say, I have the agency to stop, to regulate myself, and then to step forward. And I love this word elevate,
mm,
because to me, I'm always interested. I'm a sandbox sharer. I don't think I have to snuff out the other candles to shine more brightly. I think the more we light up, like I said, we need everyone on deck. And so this idea to me of elevate is like, can I pause long enough to bring myself online, to elevate myself so I can also elevate
mm.
others, And so I like, pause is the way in from Thich Nhat Hanh, and elevate sounded to me like the way out. So I was like, well, this is very congruent. So I like your title.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And you truly are this shining, beaming heart of practice and science and care and compassion and actual actionable change in the world, like practical, hands on. Thank you for your incredible work. And I tell you, I already look forward to having second, third, and fourth conversation with you. There's so much I want to ask you still.
Right?
So,
Oh,
how
and
can
I
how
just
can
want to say
people?
thank you for the good questions, because it just like lets me kind of reflect on things and think about it more. And sorry for any listeners. I'm giving 3 hour lectures these days at the university, so I just talk on and on. So we have to give some credit to our host here for like keeping me a somewhat on track here.
Thank you so much for so much. I appreciate it. I wonder, how can people find you? So if they want to learn more about your work, your research, your guidance, your retreats, where can workshops, where can they find you?
Yes, and you can now. I'm a non-self element in you. You can find me in you. If
Mm.
you go for a mindful walk, you found me. So that's what I ask. The best place to start: network with me by picking a moment in the next week where we can hang out, because you go,
Mm.
ah, Ellie's here with me. I'm going to brush my teeth and care for myself. So start there, and then I
Great.
also have I also have the Ease Lab at U of T. Is this lab that we've cooked up to look at
Mm.
contemplative science practice and action. We have an
Mhm.
Instagram account, so Ease Lab _ U of T. We share out about public events. We sometimes do like, 500-person talks to explore flourishing.
Oh, great.
So I kind of use the Ease Lab as my share out about cool events that I have going on. Elli Weisbaum, .com. You can see a blog I did as a graduate student and other resources. And then also Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh Center. I do lots of work with them. We've been running these Buddhist scientist retreats. So check out Plum Village's website, and they have a free app. So if you want to do, I assign my students, they have a great coffee tea meditation. If you get the Plum Village app, I would suggest starting, just type in coffee tea meditation. And that one's really practical. So those are some great places to find me. And then,
Oh,
of
that's so
course,
beautiful.
my studies, I would say also CMAJ Open is where I've published my findings, and I like to make things very free access. So if you're just a
Mm.
practitioner, you can find downloads of the different practices we do in the program. If you're a researcher, I'm sharing my interview guides on there, all data. So I hope also if you're a researcher listening to this, that the work I do, I share very freely because I want to equip you to move the needle forward. So don't reinvent anything I've done. Please take it and do more.
What a true, pure, generous heart. Just even just sharing of knowledge and everything that has impacted you, and just offering it forward. So thank you so much. I so appreciate you. And I also want to thank all the listeners for taking the time in a busy life to be curious about what may elevate your life, what may nourish you. So if you found this useful and helpful, please help us spread the word to neighbors, friends, family, coworkers, whoever might be interested in playing their part in making this world a better place. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and may your moments be filled with ease, and may you be present in as many of them. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, check out what's coming up next right over here. Thank you.